What if everything you thought you understood about sacrifice was completely backwards? What if the thing you've been avoiding, the letting go, the giving up, the dying to what you want most, is actually the very doorway to the life you've always desperately wanted? Stick with me for the next few minutes, because what Jesus taught about sacrifice is not what most churches talk about on Sunday morning. And by the end of this video, you will never look at your struggles, your losses, or your surrenders the same way again. Let's start with something honest. When most people hear the word sacrifice, they picture loss. They picture pain. They picture someone smiling through gritted teeth while giving up something they love, trying to earn points with God or trying to look spiritual enough for the people around them. That image is not just incomplete, it is actually a distortion of what Jesus was communicating. And this distortion has caused millions of people to either resent the concept entirely or to pursue a hollow, performance-based version of faith that leaves them emptier than when they started. Jesus was not teaching a religion of suffering for suffering's sake. He was teaching something far more radical, far more beautiful, and honestly, far more demanding than that. He was teaching a complete reversal of how human beings naturally think about value, meaning, power, and life itself. The first and probably most famous thing Jesus said about sacrifice comes from the Gospel of John, chapter 12, verse 24. He said that unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. A seed does not experience the soil as destruction. The seed experiences the soil as transformation. What looks like an ending from the outside is actually the beginning of something that could never have existed without that exact process. The outer shell that the seed clung to, that protected it, that defined it in its current form, has to break open. Has to. Not as punishment, not as cruelty, but as the literal mechanism through which new life becomes possible. Jesus was not talking about seeds. He was talking about you. He was talking about the version of yourself that you grip so tightly, the identity you've constructed, the image you protect, the comfort you've organized your life around. He was saying that the life you're actually capable of living cannot emerge until that protective shell gets broken open. Think about the most significant growth you've ever experienced in your life. I mean real growth, not surface-level improvement. Every single person who has ever walked through genuine transformation will tell you the same thing. It came through something they didn't choose, didn't want, and tried to avoid. A relationship that ended, a career that collapsed, a health crisis that forced them to stop, a failure that exposed something they had been hiding from themselves for years. That's the grain of wheat teaching. The breaking is not the enemy of the fruit. The breaking is the prerequisite for the fruit. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because Jesus didn't just teach this principle philosophically, he actually lived it out in the most extreme possible way. And in doing so, he demonstrated something about sacrifice that changes its entire meaning. In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus had a conversation with his disciples that must have been absolutely confusing to them in the moment. He told them that whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for his sake and the gospel's sake will save it. He followed that up with one of the most piercing questions ever asked. What does it profit a person to gain the whole world and lose their own soul? What have you been gaining? Career advancement, social status, financial security, the approval of people you respect, the comfort of avoiding hard conversations? And what has that gaining been costing you at the soul level? Because Jesus was identifying something that modern psychology has actually confirmed in study after study. When people orient their entire lives around accumulation, around getting, around securing their position, they experience a creeping emptiness that no amount of achievement can fill. The ancient world called this the pursuit of glory. We call it hustle culture, or keeping up appearances, or building your personal brand. Different language, same trap. And Jesus saw it clearly 2,000 years ago. Here's the distinction that changes everything. Sacrifice motivated by fear is just loss. You give something up because you're terrified of the consequences if you don't. That's not what Jesus was describing. Sacrifice that flows from love is generative. It creates something. It multiplies. It changes the world around you. That's the kind of sacrifice Jesus taught. Not reluctant obligation, not gritted teeth compliance, but wholehearted, uncalculating, love-driven generosity that flows from an internal overflow rather than a forced external requirement. And then there's the teaching that I think most people completely misunderstand. The call to take up your cross. Jesus said it multiple times across different Gospels. He said, "If anyone wants to come after me, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow him." In first-century Rome, a cross was not a symbol of spirituality. It was a symbol of execution. When a condemned person carried their cross through the streets, everyone watching understood what was happening. This person is walking toward their own death. They are not fighting the soldiers. They are not trying to escape. They have accepted what is coming. When Jesus used this image, he was using the most visceral, terrifying example of total surrender that his audience could possibly imagine. He was talking about the death of your ego, the death of your self-protection strategy, the death of your need to control every outcome, the death of your reputation management. He was talking about a willingness to be misunderstood, to be judged, to be seen as a fool by people operating from a different set of values, in service of something that matters more than your comfort or your image. But here is the other side of it that is absolutely critical. Every single person who has lived this way, who has genuinely chosen love over self-protection, truth over approval, purpose over comfort, they don't describe their experience as one of loss. They describe it as the first time they felt genuinely alive, the first time their life had real weight, the first time they understood what they were actually here for. There's a profound paradox at the heart of Jesus' teaching about sacrifice that he returned to again and again. You have to lose your life to find it. You have to give to receive. You have to die to live. Think about the moments in your life when you felt most alive, most connected, most like yourself. Were they moments of getting, of acquiring, of protecting what you had? Or were they moments of giving, of pouring yourself out, of showing up for someone at cost to yourself, of saying something true even when it was risky? Almost certainly, if you think honestly about it, the moments of deepest meaning in your life have been on the giving side of that equation, not the getting side. This is what Jesus was pointing at. And it's not just religious philosophy, it's actually how human beings are wired. Because what God offers cannot be earned or achieved. It can only be received. And you cannot receive something with your hands full of everything you've been trying to hold on to. This is why Jesus said it's harder for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God than for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. He wasn't condemning wealth. He was identifying a spiritual obstacle. The more we have, the more we have to lose, and the tighter we tend to grip. And the tighter we grip, the more closed we become to what we actually need most. The parable of the prodigal son is another lens into this teaching. The younger son takes his inheritance, which was essentially equivalent to wishing his father dead, goes off and wastes everything, ends up destitute and desperate. And then, in one of the most important phrases in the entire parable, the scripture says he came to himself. He stopped running. He stopped pretending. He stopped trying to make the situation into anything other than what it was. He turned around and walked home. That turning, that moment of coming to himself, that is a form of sacrifice. He sacrificed his pride. He sacrificed the story he had been telling himself about who he was and what he was doing. And the father runs to meet him. Runs. This is a detail that would have shocked the original audience because dignified men of that culture did not run. They waited. They made people come to them. But the father in Jesus' parable abandons his dignity completely and sprints toward this broken, foolish kid who had disgraced the whole family. The sacrifice in that story is not just the son's. The father sacrifices his dignity, his position, his right to make his son earn back his place. He pours out reckless, uncalculating love, and the result is a restoration that couldn't have happened any other way. This is Jesus showing us what happens at the intersection of human sacrifice and divine response. When we stop performing and start being honest, when we let go of the image and turn towards something real, we don't find judgment waiting for us. We find that thing running toward us that we've been trying to earn all along. Think about what this means for how we approach sacrifice in our lives. If your sacrifice requires an audience to feel meaningful, if you need the credit, if you need people to know what you gave up, Jesus is gently but clearly suggesting that something has gone wrong in your motivation. Real sacrifice doesn't need a standing ovation. Real sacrifice is quietly, freely, completely given without keeping score. And this brings us to perhaps the deepest teaching of all, which is the connection between sacrifice and love. Because in Jesus's framework, they are ultimately inseparable. He said there is no greater love than to lay down your life for your friends. He said the greatest commandment is to love God with everything you have and to love your neighbor as yourself. And then, in one of the most staggering moments in the gospel narratives, he washed his disciples' feet, the night before his death. When he could have done anything, when he had every reason to be focused on himself, he got down on the floor and washed their feet. Peter resisted. Of course he did, because everything in the human system says that's backwards. The powerful don't serve, the teacher doesn't wash the student's feet, the master doesn't kneel before the servant. But Jesus was demonstrating, one final time, the complete inversion that his life represented. Power expressed as service, greatness expressed as humility, love expressed as sacrifice. And then he went to the cross. Whatever your theological convictions about the precise meaning of that event, this much is undeniable from a historical standpoint. Jesus of Nazareth chose to die when he did not have to. He said explicitly that he could have called legions of angels to his defense. He told Pilate that his authority came from somewhere beyond Pilate's jurisdiction. This was not a man taken by surprise. This was a man making a choice, the most costly choice, and he made it from love. The cumulative effect of everything Jesus taught about sacrifice points to this central truth. Sacrifice is not the price you pay to get what you want. Sacrifice is the expression of what you already love most. When you sacrifice for something, you reveal what you actually value, not what you say you value, not what you post about. What you actually genuinely put on the altar when it costs you something real. So here's the question that I want to leave you sitting with. What do your actual sacrifices reveal about what you love? Not your stated priorities, your actual ones. Where do you spend your time when you have no external pressure telling you where to put it? What do you protect most fiercely? What are you unwilling to let go of? And conversely, what have you given freely, without calculation, without applause, without expecting anything in return? What has broken you open, and what grew out of that breaking? Because here is what Jesus was ultimately teaching. The life you most deeply want, the life of meaning, of genuine connection, of purpose that lasts beyond your own brief moment on this planet. That life is not built by accumulation. It is built by the repeated, costly, freely chosen act of pouring yourself out for something beyond yourself. This is the great inversion. This is what separates the teaching of Jesus from essentially every other philosophy of success and fulfillment in the ancient or the modern world. Everyone else is telling you how to get. He was teaching you how to give. And the astonishing, counterintuitive, endlessly verified truth is that the life you've been trying to get through getting, you can only actually find through giving. That is what Jesus taught about sacrifice. And once you really let it in, once it stops being a religious concept and starts being a lens through which you see your actual daily life, your relationships, your work, your losses, your surrenders, you will not look at any of it the same way again. You've made it to the end of this video, and that tells me something about you. You're not looking for easy answers. You're willing to sit with the hard questions. If this conversation stirred something in you, I'd love to know what in the comments below. What hit differently? What are you wrestling with? Because I read every single one. And if you want to go deeper in ways that are honest, challenging, and genuinely life-changing, hit that subscribe button because that is exactly what this channel is here for. See you in the next one.